In the mountains of rural Japan, winters could last for months. Fresh food vanished from the fields, and hunting was unreliable. There was no refrigeration, no electricity, and no imported produce. Yet entire villages survived harsh winters without facing hunger. This was only possible because Japan developed food preservation systems that matched its geography, climate, and culture. Before the 20th century, preservation was not optional, it was a matter of survival. Most regions depended on four resources: rice fields in the valleys, fisheries along the coasts, mountain vegetables in the uplands, and seasonal fruits harvested in late summer. Each of these resources dictated how food would be stored for winter. Coastal communities relied on fish, mountain communities relied on vegetables and grains, and rural villages relied on rice as their staple energy source. The Japanese did not invent one single method. They used a network of preservation techniques based on fermentation, dehydration, smoking, architectural cooling, and seasonal processing. Each system had its own role, and together they created a complete winter diet that worked for centuries. The first major preservation system was pickling, known as Tsukemono. Families used wooden barrels filled with salt, rice bran, miso, or sake lees to preserve radishes, cucumbers, eggplants, and mountain greens. The salt controlled moisture and bacterial growth. The fermentation introduced acids that prevented spoilage, and the barrels could sit in cold storage for months without opening. Some types of pickles could last from summer harvest all the way until spring. This allowed villages to retain vitamins, minerals, and probiotics during winter when fresh vegetables were almost impossible to obtain. The second system was fish preservation along the coasts. The most famous example was Katsuobushi. Skipjack tuna was filleted, simmered, smoked repeatedly, and then sun-dried until the meat turned rock hard. This process could take weeks, but the end result was a protein source that could last months without refrigeration. Villagers shaved the blocks into flakes and used them to make broths, soups, and seasoning. Other coastal communities relied on salted fish, dried seaweed, and fermented seafood. These foods provided iodine, protein, and minerals during winter when fishing was limited. The third system was architectural storage using specialized buildings called Kura. These earthen storehouses were designed with thick clay-plastered walls that resisted heat, cold, and humidity. They worked like natural climate control. Inside, families stored rice sacks, soybeans, dried mushrooms, fermented pastes, and preserved fruits. A well-built kura could maintain stable temperatures year-round, which dramatically slowed spoilage. Unlike modern refrigerators, these buildings required no energy, only knowledge of materials and construction. The fourth system centered around rice processing. Rice was grown in spring, harvested in autumn, and consumed through winter. To prevent spoilage and extend calories, families converted rice into mochi. Mochi is a dense rice cake that resists mold when stored properly. Combined with dried seaweed, miso paste, root vegetables, and pickles, it formed the backbone of winter meals. Rice was not just food, it was seasonal energy storage. The reason these systems worked had nothing to do with technology. It had everything to do with geography. Each region preserved what their environment naturally provided. Coastal villages smoked and dried fish because they had access to wood and seafood. Mountain villages fermented greens because they had vegetables and cold winters. And rice-growing villages used architectural storage to protect grain supplies. Preservation was ecological rather than industrial. If we compare these traditional systems to modern food storage, the contrast is extreme. Today, we depend on electricity, global supply chains, imported produce, and industrial refrigeration. If energy stopped for a week, most households would lose their entire food supply. Traditional systems were slow, seasonal, and manual, but they were resilient. They worked without fossil fuels, without chemicals, and without infrastructure. Japan is only one example. Around the world, geography forced cultures to invent unique preservation strategies. In the Arctic, Inuit communities dried and fermented fish under cold winds and ice. In North Africa, Berber tribes dried wheat and stored it in granaries to survive droughts. In Northern Europe, Scandinavians stored root vegetables and cured meat in underground cellars. Geography shaped technique, and technique shaped survival. These systems reveal an important lesson. People do not survive harsh environments with technology alone. They survive with local knowledge, and once that knowledge disappears, it rarely returns. If you want to explore more regions and understand how different cultures stored food without electricity, tell me which area we should cover next: the Arctic, the Sahara, the Himalayas, or medieval Europe.